Hey everyone, welcome to the Be Bold, Make Waves podcast, a show bringing you inspiring stories of women who are growing and scaling their business. I'm your host, Laura Comark, a website and tech integration specialist who works with online business owners who love their work and not their website. Join me as we have incredible conversations about business, mindset, productivity, and of course, the website and tech behind the business. Let's go ahead and dive in to this week's episode. Hello and welcome to today's show. For those of you who don't already know me, my name is Laura Comark. I'm a website and tech integration specialist who works with women who love their work, but not their website. I am so excited today because you know how some days you feel like a superwoman, like you can do all the things and still end the day completely energized. And yet, in just a few days later, getting out of bed completely depletes your body battery by half, and all you did was wake up. It leaves you wondering if you will ever find the consistency needed to grow a successful business. Entrepreneurs like us are realizing the importance of ditching the hustle. I'm so in favor of this, in order to build sustainable businesses without burnout. This is why I wanted to bring you guys my guest today, who is here to help us. She is on a mission to tackle the taboo and bring more flow into our lives as entrepreneurs. Tiffany, welcome to the show. I am so excited to have you today. Can you please share with everyone a little bit more about you and what you do?
I am so excited to be here. So I, much like you, started out in web design, which actually brought me to burnout. I wanted to do everything perfectly. I wanted to be consistent and show up. My energy was not there. So it led to burnout. Probably about 18 months after launching my business, I completely burnt out, could not take another client, could not do anything. And I knew that there had to be a better way of doing this. So kind of on the periphery of the coaches and the mentors that I was following was who is now my mentor, Stasha Washburn, who really talked about building a business in flow. And for me, that was like a huge light bulb moment of, wow, yeah, looking back, I could see that my energy at sometimes was really high. I could burn the candle on both ends. And then there were a couple of days each month that I wanted to take a nap in the middle of the day, but I wasn't letting myself do that. So it took a little bit of time, but I really dived into that. And I realized how much support women need to ditch that hustle mindset, but also really start to understand that our bodies, our cycles, our systems are very different than the masculine. And we have been brought up in a society that favors that masculine 24-hour androgen cycle, and that's not what our cycle looks like. Our cycle is, for most of us, a 28-day cycle. For some of us who are still menstruating, it's our menstrual cycle. For those of us who aren't menstruating, we still see it with the moon cycle, or even just seasonal cycles, and really diving into that to really bring that energy to our businesses.
Oh, I love that so much. It is something that has fascinated since I first heard about this whole, having to kind of tracking your energy levels with where you are in your cycle. So can you tell us a little bit, like, if this is the audience's first time kind of hearing about this, like, where does someone start? Like, what does this all mean?
So the first thing to do, I mean, we're all entrepreneurs, or most of us are entrepreneurs. So we understand that what we track and measure gets improved. That's what we can change. So the very first step is tracking it. Track your cycle, track your energy, track what you're eating, tracking what you're craving, because that's going to help you smooth out your cycle. But also track what feels easy and when it feels easy. So on a note paper, what did you do today? Was it easy? Was it hard? Was it something that you procrastinated on? What was your feeling of doing those activities in your business? each phase of our cycle has different strengths, just like each season, you pull different things from those the energy of those seasons. Your cycle's the same way.
And so what are the different phases of our cycle?
So there's 4 phases. You have your menstrual phase, which is when you are actually bleeding, when you actually have your period. And for most women, that's between 3 and 4 days, 3 and 7 days, sorry. After that, you go into your follicular phase, which is a lot like spring, where you're starting to come back, your energy's coming back. That is that phase where you your body's getting ready for you to ovulate, so getting ready for pregnancy. And then you hit ovulation, and that is like your peak energy. That's your summer season. That's where all you want to do is do. That's your superwoman phase. And then after that, when your body's like, oh, no pregnancy, you go into your luteal phase, which is that fall, like you're heading back into winter of your menstrual phase. So your energy starts to go down. So that's your really kind of that you're starting to turn inward. That's that phase where your energy starts to deplete. I also include in there a deep luteal phase, which is for most women, just before their period starts. And for some of us, it's like a brick wall where all of a sudden you're like, there's no energy here. But that's still like, you're still not quite at your period, but you're almost there.
Fascinating. Yeah. I years ago tried to start tracking this on like my Google Calendar. But what happens like if my cycle kind of changes around a little bit? Not necessarily every month, but sometimes it will switch and I'm like, oh, do I need to go update my Google Calendar of like where my tracking is and move it all around? Is that like, how does that work?
So it does, like it's not black and white. Each phase of your cycle is going to fluctuate a little bit depending on your hormones and how if your body's in a period of change, that might update it a bit. It's not going to drastically change it until you really kind of get into that perimenopause phase where your period may get much longer or much shorter, or if you're in a phase of life where you're dealing with a lot of stress, because stress can definitely impact our periods. But for the most part, it's, within most women, it's between 26 and 32-ish days. So understanding your body, your energy going into it so that you can notice those changes before you hit that, oh, I'm 3 days early this month. Understanding like when you ovulate, knowing that in your cycle will really help you be able to adjust your plans instead of, adjusting them 2 weeks earlier rather than when you actually get your period, is helpful. But also just, I think, understanding that it's not a perfect science. And your energy levels are going to fluctuate in general. But doing as much as you can to support yourself is where, watching what you're eating, watching your exercise, all of those things impact how you are feeling throughout your cycle. And the more you support yourself and support your cycle, the better you're going to be able to feel throughout the entire cycle. And there's ways in your business using technology and automations that can help so that when you do have those days that all of a sudden at 2 p.m. it's nap time, but you haven't sent an email out. But having those systems in place with a template that you don't have to go in and think about what to put in that email is always really helpful. Having a booking system where you don't have to go back and forth and try and find a time to the point where you just want to throw up your hands and say, forget it. This appointment is not worth this frustration or this level of, sometimes when you're in those certain phases of your cycle, you just don't have that patience to work with clients. So knowing that to kind of be like, okay, I need to limit my bookings during this phase, or I need to limit client interaction. I can't do that front facing stuff, but I can do the back end stuff.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of automations and having a lot of those systems in place for the back end to make everything run so much smoother and easier on the front end. So yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about how we can use this in advantage for our business. Like, what should I be doing in my business in like my different phases of my cycle?
So in your menstrual phase, that's really like your big picture phase. It's winter. You're thinking about all of the things. That's a good time to declutter,
Mm.
um, and just get rid of the things that don't necessarily feel aligned. But it is definitely that inner focus, that big picture thinking. As you go into your follicular phase, you start looking outward. You start looking at your creativity, your content. What can you play with? Creating lists and really starting to get ready for that doing phase, which is your ovulation phase, which is just go out and do all of the things. Your ovulation phase is also like your peak verbal skills. So really good time to have those hard conversations, to do video, to schedule those podcast interviews, really just understanding like, okay, this is my doing phase. This is the phase where I have that extra energy. This is when I'm going to do my launch. This is when I'm going to run that webinar. And then as you go into your luteal phase, your energy starts to decrease again. So it's a really good time for that evaluation, that review. If you aren't on, where your period and, your cycle is ending at the end of the month, maybe doing your tracking and your data reviews during that luteal phase, not necessarily with the calendar month, but with your cycle. So that you can really, because you have that analytical thinking to really kind of go in and review what worked, what didn't work. It's another phase that's really good for list making. The one thing I do say is do not go shopping during your luteal phase. It is a very easy phase to spend some money in.
Really?
Yes. If you ever go back and look at your credit card statements, you'll probably see that you spend a little extra money during that phase.
Oh, how funny. Yeah, I'm going to check that out because I know we had talked previously and we were talking about some course that I had bought and you were like, or a program I joined. You're like, I'd be curious to know what phase you were in when you bought that. And I meant to go back and check and I will because that's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, that those barriers of do I really actually need this? And then a lot of times, like if you think about it, when you purchase something and then you go into your menstrual phase, which is a decluttering phase, that buyer's remorse when it wasn't necessarily something that you actually needed.
Been there, done that.
Yeah,
For
I think
sure.
we all have.
Oh, I love all that. Okay. So now how can we work in flow to like help us prevent burnout? Can we talk a little more about that?
I think the first thing is really figuring out what your flow is. Everybody's going to be a little bit different. Everyone's cycle runs a little bit different. And the first thing, like I said, is tracking, is sitting down and figuring out, okay, what is easy in this phase? What is difficult? And then seeing, okay, this is a difficult task for me in 3 out of the 4 phases. I hate responding to emails. Okay, I need to, in my ovulation phase, set up templates so that when I get those commonly asked questions via email or direct messenger, all I have to do is pull out my template, customize it a little bit, and hit the send button. But because I did it during my ovulation phase, I know that what it says is good. Boundaries, booking systems. How many times are you you just give in because you don't have the patience to hold your boundaries? So that's another really good booking systems. They are great for working in flow because you can just send the link, say, hey, this is my availability, book in. You can also use the booking system to really kind of enforce those boundaries and give yourself that extra bit of space during your deep luteal menstrual phase where you don't have that energy to present yourself forward. So really just kind of using that as a web designer, building out your processes so that during your follicular phase, which is your creative phase, is when you're doing the sitemap, the planning, the design. And during your ovulation phase is when you're pulling it all together, you're doing the doing. And then you're presenting it at the end of that phase. And then you kind of have where you have those verbal skills to present it to your clients. And then you have that luteal phase where you can be a little bit more analytical about what changes might need to happen. And then giving yourself a break during that menstrual phase and then coming back to it, planning out your processes in a long enough cycle so that it fits with your phases. But also considering your client's cycle. If you're working with women who have a cycle, consider their phases as well. Making sure that you give them, if they're providing the copy or they're providing the design and you're just building it out, give them the time and space that they need to work within their cycle so that there isn't that feeling of rushed on their end because they've been able to work in their creative phase. They've been able to get things done in their time and space. Business coaches are kind of, in that same boat. Service providers who meet with clients, yoga instructors, take the time and space to plan out your classes so that during those creative phases, do your promotional stuff during your ovulation phase, and then during your luteal and your menstrual cycle, if you're a yoga teacher, teach classes in flow for yourself. Really get to know your clients and teach classes in flow for them so that it makes life easier if you're really just taking and thinking through what it is that needs to happen when, and knowing you have a plan.
I love all of that so much. I think there's going to be some changes I'm going to be making in my business. I actually this year, at the start of the year or in December, I blocked off 1 week every month on my Google Calendar, and it's set on repeat till the end of time. And I'm calling it my CEO week. And I've always wanted to implement that in the past, and I would try to keep time blocked off, but then I wasn't good about holding that boundary that I was setting with myself, and I would let other things get scheduled. So I would be curious during that what would be your advice for when I should schedule that CEO week? And maybe let me give you a little more information on what my plan is during that week. My plan is to work on my business, get caught up on bookkeeping, do some content creation and batch posting things, just getting caught up on anything that right now I'm in the middle of my this is the start of my CEO week right now. And I also have a summit presentation I'm going to be writing and pulling together and recording. So with all that stuff, that feels like a lot of creative things that I need to, but also I need to be taking a lot of action. So am I thinking that needs to be my luteal phase week?
So the creative phase is that follicular phase.
Okay.
And then ovulation is that doing phase. And they're the ones, they're right next to each other. And it depends on what your energy looks like during your menstrual phase and your luteal phase. For me, I take the end of my luteal phase, beginning of my menstrual phase off, because during the other phases, I can do stuff while also seeing clients. So I do a lot of that big picture thinking when I take my week off. So for you, it actually sounds like that follicular phase where you were like, okay, I need dedicated time to content creation, to the doing, the planning, the actual, those parts of the process, not just the big picture thinking or the list making, reviewing, evaluating. So for you, I would actually look at depending on how it fits within your cycle, if your cycle, is like where you kind of feel that transition on like a Wednesday or a Thursday, that's great. Because then you can plan it so that that week, because not all of our cycles line up to a calendar week, line up to, so just using that kind of, okay, I need to look at the end of follicular, beginning of ovulation to kind of see where I have that creative energy.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. So for women who are either like on birth control, so they're not getting a period, or for women who are no longer menstruating, how do they use the moon's cycles to track? Like how does that translate?
So, the new moon is like your menstruation cycle. So, that's that winter phase. That's big picture, really kind of reset. So new moon reset. And then your follicular phase is that like waxing moon. Your ovulation is the full moon. If you think full moon, big energy. And then your waning moon is the luteal phase. So it kind of goes, heading back to that new moon. And again, nothing is like perfectly linear. So like, I think a lot of times the best way to figure it out is to say, okay, I'm going to just start tracking, start looking at, this is another bit of information for me for my business. Also personal life, because those big energies, like, okay, that's when I'm going to plan the family vacation because I'm going to be in a really good headspace for that. But so that's kind of, that's how it lines up, if you were to use the moon. I mean, and some people, especially once they head into that perimenopause, menopausal, phase of life, the moon cycles are going to be a stronger cycle for them. They're going to feel that energy shift with the moon, versus someone who's in, the middle of, their menstruation, age range, where that's the dominant cycle for them. But there's other people out there who don't necessarily even feel the moon, but they feel it seasonally. So it doesn't necessarily work for, the daily day-to-day stuff, but they can plan big picture. Okay, Q1, winter phase, I'm in that big picture thinking. There is some more of that day-to-day. And then the summer is when they're going to do their big launch for the year, because that's that doing energy that comes from summer.
Oh, I love that so much. Like it's so interesting because we're all so connected to the moon and the weather around us, where it affects us. I know, I mean, I'm in California. We get a lot of sunshine. Like I don't do well when there's not a lot of sunshine because I'm so used to all that vitamin D constantly. But I mean, I hear about it from my friends who live, in the very cold, snowy places of the world, where they struggle with like the seasonal, is it seasonal?
Seasonal depression. Sad.
Seasonal depression. Yeah. Where it's cold and it's not a lot of fun.
I know last week we had very gray, cloudy weather here, and it was a tough week. Like it was just, I was like, I did not want to sit at the computer. I did not want to do anything. It was definitely one of those weeks where I'm like, it is a minimum viable action week. So doing the absolute minimum I can to get through.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love all that. Okay. So let's kind of like do a little summary here. We have the 4 phases.
Mm-hmm.
We have our follicular, our ovulation, our luteal, and our menstruation. And in our follicular, it's kind of hard to say. That's our spring. That's when like there's some new energy. That's our creative thinking. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Okay. And then in ovulation, like we have energy. We're going to go we're going to implement, we're going to launch our stuff. We're going to get it all out. We're going to cross all our T's, dot all our I's. It's like push, go time. And then we're going to start to our energy is going to start to deplete in our luteal phase. And then we'll really kind of just hit that brick wall in our menstruation phase. And that's also just like where we can sit, kind of chill, relax, look at the big picture and really do some of that big picture thinking, big picture planning, future planning.
Yeah. So like, and towards like the beginning of your menstruation phase is definitely big picture thinking. You're not doing anything. You're not planning. You're just thinking. As you head into that follicular where you're starting to get that creative energy, that's where you start to plan those, you start creating those lists. And it just, everything kind of just like flows into one another. Like there's no like delineation of, okay, this is, I'm definitely in, like ovulation. I'm definitely in follicular. Today's the day. It's more of, oh, okay, that energy is coming back. I have more energy. I'm feeling more creative. I can do a bunch of the different things. And for some women, they do have that deep luteal where it is like a brick wall. It's like the last 2 or 3 days of the luteal phase that they're like, okay, there's no energy here. And it's okay to just take a nap, step back and be like, okay, I need a break, because that's when we push through those phases is when we start heading into burnout, because we're working against our hormones. And that's what creates the stress and the anxiety and the things that lead to burnout, because when you're dealing with stress, when you're dealing with anxiety, you're releasing other hormones into your body that then impact your the hormones related to your menstrual cycle. So you end up in a catch-22. You're fighting yourself. Which is why it's so important to like take care of yourself throughout the entire cycle. And there's so many different ways that we can do that.
In terms of tracking, what would you say? Like, how would you track? Would you be like, okay, so today, are there certain questions you would ask? Like, do I feel energized? Do I feel creative? On a scale of 1 to 5, where am I falling in like my creative juices flowing today? Is that like, what are the questions you would ask yourself?
So I always start with physically, like how am I feeling? What is my energy level? Can I get out of bed easily today? Because there are some days that it's just, I get out of bed, I get to the computer, I'm like, I'm done. All I did was walk 3 feet to the office and I'm done. But tracking that, so tracking my energy, tracking what I'm eating. As I've dived deeper into this, I've realized that what I eat impacts, because it has impacts on your hormones. It has impact on your body systems. So there are certain foods that work better with your cycle at certain phases. So diving into that and really noticing my luteal phase, I love sweet potatoes. And really just like diving into that and knowing that. And sometimes I won't notice where I am until I've realized what I want to eat. Because your body has a way of craving what it needs. And sometimes, the potato chip craving is just a potato chip craving, but sometimes it's because your body needs the salt and the other things that come from the potato chips. So noticing what I'm eating, noticing, how hard things are. I literally have a tracker that says today I just put like general. So today I did follow-ups. Today I did my social media planning. Today I did whatever it is that I worked on. Today I created a landing page. And how hard or how easy was that task? Like, did it take a lot of effort to do something that during my ovulation phase takes me, half the effort? Just really thinking about, where I am. Today is day 7, and this is what I did, and this is the effort it required. In addition to tracking, okay, where's the moon today? Where's, I have my day, my cycle day. I have what I've eaten. Did I move? What kind of movement did I want to do today? Some days getting up and going for that walk feels amazing. Other days it's okay, I'm going to do a yoga flow. I'm going to just really relax into myself. Or I'm going to take a dance class. I have that energy. And just, I track that, what kind of energy, what kind of exercise did I do? And that all just, it's, I'm actually in the process of setting it up as a freebie for people to get that resource. But it's really just for me, like I have it's like my day in pixels. It's just little squares that I color in. And that's how I track, and you can go in as deep or as I recommend not staying at the surface level, but going in a little bit deeper, but you can go as deep as you feel like you need to in order to really learn about yourself. And that's the first thing to do, is learn about yourself.
Oh, I love that so much. I love this conversation, Tiffany. This is so fascinating to me. I love finding ways, as someone who is always trying to be more productive. My husband and I just had a conversation the other day. He's like, sometimes you're trying to be too productive. We were driving back home and we had stopped to get like a coffee, and then we were going to go get gas. He was doing something. I'm like, why are you doing that right now? Wait until we're pumping the gas and then you can do this thing. Like, I think he was changing out of like the snow boots into flip-flops. I'm like, don't do that now. Let's go get coffee now. And then when the gas is pumping and we have nothing else to do for like 3 minutes while it pumps, then you can do something else. He's like, you are just trying too hard to be productive. I'm like, I just want to be efficient with my time.
Yeah. And as entrepreneurs, I think that we've learned that very early on, is that you need to be efficient, especially if you want that balance of life and work and utilizing time as best as you can. And I'm guessing apparently carries over into every element of your life.
Definitely does. Oh my gosh. Tiffany, I could talk to you all day long about this. I do have one question that I ask everyone who comes on the show. And that is, what is one piece of advice you would give to someone when they are first starting out in their business that would help them be bolder, be louder, and make waves?
So this is like my motto in my business, and I remind clients all of the time, the world needs your gifts. Don't let technology hold you back, because for so many people, that is the one thing that they get held up on. And technology is so supportive of you and your business. Reach out, talk to someone, have a biz bestie that can, encourage you that, yes, you can do your own tech. You don't need to love it. You can outsource it as soon as possible, but you can do it. Don't be afraid of the technology.
Oh, I love that. Yes, that speaks to me so much. That is something yes, so much. Tiffany, can you tell our audience, how can people work with you? How can they find out more about you? How can you help with all the work that you're doing now? How are you helping people?
So I do work with clients on setting up their tech, so that to support them so that they can take time off. But I do also work with clients in a coaching capacity, working with them to help them really get in tune with themselves, learn their cycles, and figure out what that flow looks like for them. Mix of business coaching and period coaching, so that they can really dive into that. And the best way really right now is to follow me, Facebook, Instagram, and website is coming soon. As I've pivoted, I'm in the middle of a big rebrand, so that should be soon. Awesome. Depending on when they're listening to this, it may actually be up by then.
Wonderful. Well, I will link all of your links in the show notes. And thank you so much for coming on the show today. This was such a fascinating conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. Be sure to check out the show notes at lauracomark.com/podcast. And if you're ready to turn your website into a marketing machine, get more sales, save time, and simplify the back end of your business, grab my free resource, Power Integrations for Your Website. head on over to lauracomark.com/power. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next week. Bye now.